What's up, everybody? Matt Gajewski here, back again talking college football. And today we are breaking down Northwestern ahead of the 2025 season. If you like this content, please consider subscribing, leaving a like, even a comment. All that helps a small channel like this a ton. You'd be shocked what it does to get us in front of more viewers. So thank you if you've done that. I sincerely appreciate it. If I miss anything, please let me know in the comments. Interesting year for Northwestern. Let's take a look at last year's metrics before we dive into the current roster. Offensively challenged team, Northwestern certainly was 129th in total offense. This team had a lot of struggles passing the ball. There's quite a bit of turnover in this area of the roster, which is probably for the better. They bring in maybe their best quarterback since, I don't know, Clayton Thorson, maybe even beyond that, but we'll get to it. Offensive line was the best unit on the offense, without a doubt. They struggled in the run game. Receivers didn't give them as much as they probably should have either. But the real strength of this team outside of the offensive line was the defense. 44th overall. The only metric that really lagged a little bit was run defense. They had a few defensive tackle injuries and a couple edge defenders as well. So that was not a position of strength due to injury. But they're going to be returning quite a bit on defense as well as the offensive line. And I think the offense is probably going to try to play a little different. 54.5% pass rate is very high for Northwestern. And if you just look at the coaching staff, I don't think that's how they want to play. And to get there, David Braun is now entering his third season with Northwestern. The record, 12 and 13 overall since he took over the job. He was the previous coach of North Dakota State. And he originally came to this program. He had to take over interim duties from Pat Fitzgerald when there was that scandal. Last year, Northwestern was 4-8, and I think that is honestly a little bit of an accomplishment. A couple things that factor in there. The NIL landscape is not favorable for Northwestern. This was already a program that was a little bit difficult to win at. And now that you have kids able to transfer, no longer does Northwestern have these windows where, all right, you get these kids, they develop for 3 years, and then you have 20 senior starters on your team. Now, kids are just going to other schools at various points in their Northwestern careers. They have become a little bit of a feeder system. And the other thing that hurts Northwestern, there's no Big Ten West anymore, and we added the Pac-12 teams. Their schedule is much more difficult, as is the entire former Big Ten West, and they still went 4-8 on this schedule. Their wins came against Miami, Ohio, Eastern Illinois, Maryland, and Purdue. They had a single-digit loss to Duke. However, the only other game that was close somewhat was Illinois. They lost that game by 10 points. They had 6 losses by double digits. It's still a building program. And with all the changes and the coach in this current landscape, things are going to be tough. But I'm optimistic for Braun. I'm optimistic for their OC, Zach Lujan, who enters the second season. He was with that South Dakota State team that David Braun coached. He was the OC there. And historically, Lujan uses a lot of like motion RPOs. It's typically run heavy. They use a lot of 12 personnel, 2 tight end sets. They tried to do that at Northwestern last year. It wasn't the most effective, but this team does not want to be a 54% pass team. They're going to try to run the ball more. Tim McCargyle is back as DC. He received an internal promotion from this team after originally coaching linebackers from 2018 to 2023. The defense was solid, and I think the offense is going to improve a lot. My diagnosis of the current problems was player personnel, and they went out and they tried to address a lot of that. But let's look at the player personnel. Northwestern is never going to be at the top of the Big Ten or the country in recruiting. We just want them to probably be around the top 50 and not a bottom 2 team in the Big Ten, which they've been the last 2 years. And they were 17th this year, even jumping 16 spots compared to the 2024 recruiting class. They return talent better than most teams. They're a pretty good retention team. They do lose a couple of their big players every single year to transfer. They've lost some to Notre Dame. It's just what happens with Northwestern. But overall, they're a pretty good development team. Transfer portal, they've actually shown some life, and a lot of that is just because they add some high-profile players. This year, Preston Stone comes in at quarterback. So they jump from 121 to 68 in the portal. You'd hope they can be a portal team like around the top 50 just with their place in the Big Ten. But overall, this is a tricky program. Let's take a look at the roster before we move any further. Here is our 2 deep. If you would like access to this, you can take a look in the Discord link below. We have transfers in yellow, what year they are to the right, how many snaps they played the last 2 years, what recruit they are in terms of the star ranking, and then an overall value score, which takes into account your recruitment first and foremost. Then the more snaps you play, the less it looks at recruiting, the more it looks at your on-field play. Preston Stone comes in at quarterback. He is the SMU transfer. He's the highest recruit this program has had in a long time, especially at the QB position. He's the most talented QB I think they've had since Clayton Thorson, who had a cup of coffee in the NFL. And I think he might be even more talented than that. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's by a significant margin. Preston Stone has played a lot of football. He originally was the legacy at SMU. He sits behind Tanner Mordecai. He subsequently gets injured. Last year, he starts the season, and he ends up bench for Kevin Jennings, which really isn't a slap in the face to Stone at all. Jennings was awesome. He led SMU to the college football playoff. And if you just look at Stone's career numbers, I mean, these are pretty good. 59.3% completion percentage, 4,030 yards. That's 9 yards per attempt. 35 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 38 big-time throws, 17 turnover-worthy plays. He also can run a little bit. He's 6'1", 214, 287 rushing yards. That's 3.3 yards per carry. He's only taken 18 sacks in his career. That's 13.2% pressure to sack ratio. I mean, these numbers are awesome. I think if it weren't for a few ill-timed turnovers at the beginning of last year, Preston Stone, I mean, he could have started for SMU throughout the year. He was a very talented QB. Just unfortunate for him that Kevin Jennings was also a baller. There is absolutely no doubt he's an upgrade on the QB room, and a pretty significant one at that. He should do a lot for this Northwestern team. And if he goes down for any reason, injury, Jack Lausch is still there. He started last year. Pretty underwhelming, 54% completion, only 5.8 yards per attempt, 7 touchdowns, 8 picks, 10 big-time throws, 14 turnover-worthy plays. Not the most mobile, 17% pressure to sack ratio. He's a quality backup. I think it's good they retained him. But Preston Stone is the ceiling of the offense. He's going to generate a lot more for this team, especially through the air, compared to what they were playing with last year. At running back, they returned their lead rusher, Cam Porter. He is 5'10", 213. He rushed for 501 yards. That was 4 yards per carry, caught 23 passes. He's amassed over 1,700 yards through his career, but it's not been the most efficient. Last year was his best season, and he only averaged 3 yards after contact per attempt. The best backs in the country are over 4, so leaves a little bit to be desired. The most efficient back was actually Joseph Hyman. He's only 5'9", 186 pounds, so probably never going to be looking at a full-time role at that size. But 4.9 yards per carry for him, 15 catches. He averaged 4.5 yards per carry after contact with 14 missed tackles. They also bring back Caleb Komolafe, who is 5'11", 208 pounds, only 2.8 yards per carry for him. You could very easily see him pass by some freshmen, Daniel Anderson, Deshaun Reeder are a couple of players to mention. I don't think this running back room is dynamic by any means, but having at least some incumbents who've seen the field is a positive for this team. At the very least, I don't think it's any worse. Not that it could get much worse. Wide receiver. They lose their top 3. AJ Henning and Bryce Kurtz are the top players there. I thought the presumed wide receiver 1 was going to be Frank Covey. He played the most among the incumbents at least, but it wasn't always pretty. 6'1", 193. He played 253 snaps last year, only caught 10 balls for 98 yards. Perimeter receiver, but yards per route left a lot to be desired. And then, fortunately, they go out and they add Griffin Wilde from South Dakota State. This kid was awesome in the FCS. 6'2", 200 pounds, 71 catches for 1,154 yards. Played outside 62% of the time, a crazy 3.24 yards per route. Stepped up in competition, had 150 receiving yards against Oklahoma State. He should be your wide receiver 1, with Frank Covey probably being your 2. The rest of the depth is basically unproven. Chase Farrell comes in from Stanford. He hasn't played a snap yet, 5'10", 180 pounds. Ricky Ahumazare is back after 16 snaps as a freshman last year. Ahumazare, I'm probably saying that incorrectly, excuse me. He's been running with the ones this spring, but he's 6'4", 210. He's one of the higher 3 stars with the program. I think you're probably going to see some him, especially because last year they played walk-ons Drew Wagner and Hayden Elignon a lot. Elignon is 6'4", 194. He caught 4 passes, but he played 284 snaps. He just should not be playing that much as a walk-on. There's not much depth behind these guys. Carson Grove, Braden Blewett, he tore his ACL as a high schooler. He's a freshman now. Luckily, this team does not rely a lot on receiver depth. We mentioned they try to play 12 personnel. That's what the offense did when they was over at South Dakota State. They tried to last year. I think they're probably going to try to again this year with more running. So I think your main two receivers are Covey and Wildy, playing almost every single snap. And then who plays that situational third receiver, whether it's Farrell, Ma'areze. Man, that is a hard last name. I wish Northwestern would do some pronunciations on their website. But anyway, they're not going to use their wide receiver 3 a lot. Speaking of tight ends, they like to play 12 personnel. They did it on a majority of their snaps, but they lose 3 of them. Thomas Gordon, Marshall Lang, and Duke Ogles are all gone. They had Alex Lyons from New Mexico State to try to bridge the gap. He's been in college a long time. He's well-traveled. He began his career with Arizona. He then goes down to JUCO last year up to New Mexico State. His best season actually came in 2021, where he played 651 snaps. He only had 10 catches on 20 targets that year, 3 drops, very bad blocking numbers. He is 6'6", 250. We've just never seen him play well at any level of competition, New Mexico State, Arizona. So I'm not really optimistic he can do it here. But fortunately, there's a lot of other players I think that can jump Alex Lyons with no problem. Hunter Welsing, Lawson Albright are the 2 most experienced options. Albright is 6'5", 250, only 2 catches for him in his career. Not the best blocker, but he's only played 66 snaps through 3 years. Welsing is similar, 6'3", 240, only 65 snaps through 5 years. Middling blocker, only 1 catch to his name, but those are players that have seen at least a little bit of time. Fortunately, some of the highest recruits over the last 2 years for Northwestern are at the tight end position. The highest recruit last year in the total, all of their 2024 class, was Patrick Schaller, a tight end. So he's now a redshirt freshman. Again, the highest recruit in last year's class. The 4th highest recruit in this year's class is Tyler Kielmeyer. He's a tight end. And then the highest recruit of the 3 actually came in 2023 was Camp McGee. He was a top 750-ish recruit in their class. So they have 3 highly recruited tight ends that just haven't seen the field yet. I would not be shocked if any of them jump what is currently atop the depth chart, which gives them a lot of depth at a position that's going to be on the field quite a bit for this team. Offensive line, they lose 3 starters on paper, highlighted by guard Josh Thompson. He was the best one. They do return their left tackle, Caleb Tiernan, who's an awesome player, 3-year starter, took a huge jump last year, only allowed 13 pressures, was an elite run blocker, 2,125 snaps to his name. He's going to lock down the blind side. From there, your other returning starter is a center, and they actually have a pair of them because of injury. The initial starter, Kent State and Colorado transfer, Jack Bailey, only made it through 4 games, then he got hurt. He played well when he was out there for Northwestern, only 3 hurries on 220 snaps. He has 2,397 snaps throughout his college career. So I think he's probably going to play your center position. And then because Jack Bailey got hurt, Jackson Carcello started the remainder of the year. He played 542 snaps, a little below average, but he wasn't expected to play. Still decent in the run game, only allowed 13 pressures himself. I think he could play one of the guard positions perhaps. And if you're just trying to get your 5 best on the field, I think you might be looking at Bailey and Carcello with one of them playing guard. They also add Talon Chandler at center. He's a Missouri transfer, only played 7 snaps as a freshman last year. I think he's probably just your heir apparent. They're going to lose Bailey and Carcello this year. They're both in their final year. So if you're just trying to look ahead, bringing in Chandler from Missouri kind of makes some sense just to play center maybe next year. Right tackle, I think you're looking at Xavier Gray. He comes in from Liberty. He is 6'9", 340 pounds. Began his career with Akron, has started the last 2 years with Liberty, and vastly improved last year. Only 12 pressures, 1 sack, very good run blocker. Was against a low level of competition, so he does need to come up and do it against the Big Ten. If he doesn't win this job, which I think he is the favorite, they do have Matt Keeler and Deuce McGuire behind him. There are a couple depth tackles that could potentially play a role this year. Keeler, he was formerly with Texas Tech, and he played 221 snaps there. He's a player that came in last year's transfer class, thought he would play a little more. McGuire only played 11 snaps, probably a deeper guy to just mention. But that's where your tackle position stands. It's in a good spot. Center's in a good spot. Guard, they're replacing a little bit more. They bring in South Dakota State transfer Evan Bjornson, who actually went to my high school. So shout out Appleton North, shout out Evan Bjornson. He's a 3-year starter in the FCS with South Dakota State. Only allowed 4 sacks and 23 pressures on 2,528 snaps. That's in his career. 4 sacks on 2,500 snaps is incredible. Very good run blocker. Needs to make the jump from the FCS, which is never easy. Martez Lewis is the other guard transfer. He comes from Minnesota. Started all of 2023. Was below average on his 617 snaps that season. 10 pressures, 2 sacks, poor run blocking. Last year, he starts the first 2 games, gets benched immediately. Didn't start again until the bowl game where they had some opt-outs. Allowed 6 QB pressures in a very small sample. So he is not the best option, which is why I think you might see one of their centers play a guard position. Maybe they move one of the tackles over. They also have a couple other depth pieces. They had to start some random players last year through some pretty tough stretches of the game. Izomo Aratkai played it a lot. He played 148 snaps. He started against Ohio State and Michigan as a freshman. He actually held his own with 2 pressures and just 2 pressures overall. Decent run blocking. Aratkai actually played decent against those 2 teams, which is shocking. They also have Anthony Bursa, who had to start against Iowa and Wisconsin. 126 snaps for him. Very good run blocker. Not as good of a pass blocker. 7 hurries allowed. But, man, I mean, you could probably start either of those players in a pinch, and I'd probably be looking to do so over Martez Lewis. You can't really find harder games to throw freshman guards into the fire than what Bursa and Aratkai had to play last year. Defensive line. Off the edge, they return their top defender. That's Aiden Hubbard. He has now played 1,101 snaps through 3 years. 404 of those came last year. 29 pressures, 6 sacks, above average run defense numbers. Very good place to start your defensive edge group. The second most experienced edge is Michael Kilbane. He is 267. He is a rotational edge in the sense that he plays a little bit of 5 technique. He'll kick inside sometimes at that size. 9 QB pressures, above average run defense. That's kind of why he's out there. He's not your pure pass rusher like a Hubbard is. They also have a 4-star redshirt sophomore in Anto Saka, who played 253 snaps last year, was incredibly productive with 27 pressures. He only made 15 tackles, but if he cleaned up some of his missed tackle numbers, it would have looked a lot better. And then they also get back Richie Haggerty, who missed all of 2024. He was originally with Miami, Ohio, transfers down to Southern Illinois, played 331 snaps in 2023 with 14 pressures, solid run defense. That's 4 quality edges with actual real talent up at the top, some 4-star talent at that. Defensive tackle, they lose Reginald Pearson, but they return Najee Story. He had 379 snaps. He's played almost 1,000 snaps in 3 years. 14 pressures from the interior is pretty good. Not the biggest player, so his run defense lagged a little bit. He's only 285 pounds. They also bring in Miguel Jackson from Utah State, 3-year starter. Actually, more of a rotational player. He started some games, but it is what it is. The snaps aren't the best for him, but, I mean, elite run defense numbers in 4 games with Utah State, that's solid. His play with Charlotte before, where he was a rotational guy, is not fantastic. Sort of a dice roll at defensive tackle for this team. If he can't come in and play right away, they do have a couple other players that have seen time. Carmine Bastone and Brendan Flakes. Bastone missed the first half of last year with an injury, started the final 6 games. He was above average across the board. Played more in 2023. It was kind of the same case, above average across the board. Flakes has been a rotational defensive tackle, basically just an average player that you want in rotation, not anything more. Overall, the defensive line is pretty good. I think the edge group is stronger. Linebacker, they lose Xander Mueller. They do return Mac Uline. He led the team in tackles at 85. He was a first-year starter, very good in run defense, decent in coverage, 79% completion for 280 scoreless yards. Clean up a little bit of the coverage, and you could be looking at an all-conference player. The second linebacker is up for grabs. They bring in a pair of transfers, Yanni Karlaftis from Purdue, Jack Sadowski, the 5th from Iowa State. Both they were underachievers. I don't know any other way to put this. Karlaftis is a former 4-star, obviously the brother George Karlaftis, who's in the Chiefs. He's a nepotism 4-star. I don't think there's any other way to put it. He's been horrible every time he's been on the field with Purdue. He's now played 975 snaps, all of them below average. He did improve his run defense last year, 57 tackles, but he's an absolute nightmare in coverage. Just a turnstile, automatic completions. Karlaftis needs to improve vastly if he's going to play for this defense. Sadowski's not that much better. He's played 742 snaps for Iowa State over the last 2 years, well below average play. Started 4 games last year. 29 tackles is not great. So we'll see if one of these guys has to start opposite Uline, which would be a problem unless there's crazy development. They do return Braden Bruss and Nigel Glover. Bruss is a redshirt sophomore. He played 126 snaps last year. He's been around average in a limited role, so he would need growth. Nigel Glover has not played yet. He's a former 4-star. Began with Northwestern, dabbled with Ohio State, had to come back, still didn't play, which isn't great. So I just don't know who the other linebacker is opposite Uline. We will see. I'm sure this will play out. It's positive you have 4 guys that could do it. They're all going to compete. So if you could piece together above average play from one of them or a rotation of them, that would be awesome. But remains to be seen. Defensive back, they lose 3 starting DBs. 2 of their better players are gone. Theron Johnson and Devin Turner. On the boundary, they do return Josh Fusel, who played 570 snaps as a freshman, and he really impressed. 39 tackles, 67% completion percentage, 366 yards for 3 touchdowns, 3 PBUs. A little bit of a gambler, some big plays allowed, but some big plays contributed to the defense himself. Another year as a sophomore should benefit him. I think he's a good place to start. They do return a pair of slots. They rotated Braden Turner and Robin Fitzgerald last year. Robert Fitzgerald was a little more efficient. He played 368 snaps, made 46 tackles, 76% completion, 1 touchdown, 1 pick for him. Turner played 389. He started 7 games, made 37 tackles, 73% completion percentage for 349 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 PBUs. Maybe you could move one of them to the boundary, but you have 2 experienced slots. That position should be handled just fine. And I think you can just use them, one as a starter, one as depth, because the boundary opposite Fusel should probably be Fred Davis from Jacksonville State. He's a former Clemson 4-star, well-traveled at this point, never played with Clemson, played a year with UCF, never really played there. Goes to Jacksonville State last year, and he starts for the first time. 18 tackles, not great in run defense, but awesome in coverage down in Conference USA. 59% completion percentage for 142 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 PBUs. It's either him or they do get back Ore Adei, who missed most of last year with an injury. He played 389 snaps in 2023. Pretty good in coverage there. 69% completion for 172 scoreless yards. There's a lot of options to fill this secondary that have seen experience. They've seen playing time. So even though you lose some corners, this is a position I think that won't be the worst on the team. I think it still should be pretty good overall. And I trust the development of this defense. At safety, they go out and add Michigan State 4-star Dylan Tatum. He only played in 1 game last year before he was injured. Very good in 2023, 45 tackles, 57% completion percentage, 4 PBUs in that span. He should start. The second most experienced safety is Damon Walters. He played 359 snaps as a freshman last year, and he actually was pretty good too. These freshman DBs last year really showed something. Walters made 42 tackles, 46% completion percentage for 30 scoreless yards, 1 interception, 1 PBU. I mean, that's very good. Depth safeties include Gardner Wallace, Tito Williams Jr. Neither has played very much, but safety is looking pretty solid at the top. I don't think this defense is going to take much of a step back, and they were 44th last year. With some injury luck, players stay healthier, I think you might see this unit improve a little bit. Offense, there is no way this unit is 129th again, bringing in Preston Stone and Griffin Wilde and some of the players they have back. The offensive line maybe isn't quite as strong, but honestly, I think it's probably going to be right in the same range, a little above average. Hopefully you can get a little more out of Cam Porter and those receivers, but man, this is a pretty good roster for Northwestern. At kicker, they returned Luke Akers, perfect on 11 extra points last year, was 10 of 14 on field goals, sprayed from every distance, kind of. He was 0 of 2 from 50 plus, 2 of 3 from 40 plus, 92nd most efficient kicker in college football. Northwestern had a special teams problem last year, so I don't know what they're going to give you on this part of the field in 2025. I'm not expecting them to be great. But overall, I think this roster is closer to some teams in the middle of the Big Ten than people want to admit with some of the additions. I can't stress how big the Preston Stone was. But let's look at the schedule and determine what we can expect from this Northwestern team as we look at the upcoming season. Road trip to Tulane, definitely not easy. Could win it, though. Other non-con games against Western Illinois and Louisiana Monroe. I think most likely you are 2-1. Could be 3-0, but that road trip is not easy. In conference for Northwestern, it starts out pretty hard. You have a week 3 game against Oregon. You get it at home with a new QB for the Ducks in Dante Moore. I guess you want to face them early and at home if you can. But I mean, they're going to be clear underdogs. They go to Penn State in week 7. They're going to be clear underdogs there. They also play Michigan. So you have a lot of the best teams in this conference on the schedule. Not to mention, go down a rung. You have road trips to Illinois, USC, and Nebraska. There's no way around this. This is a tough schedule. Even just looking at raw power rankings, people will be surprised, I think. I think this Northwestern team is closer to the Wisconsin tier, the Nebraska tier, the Minnesota tier than people want to admit with the additions they've made. They've been very thoughtful about the portal additions and the recruits. But man, this is an unforgiving schedule. Your easiest games outside of non-con are probably a home game against Purdue or UCLA. But how does this team get to a bowl? They're going to be very clear underdogs to those big 3, Oregon, Penn State, Michigan, and then just the road trips, man. Illinois, USC, and Nebraska. You need to win every game otherwise. And that includes a weird game against Minnesota that you're playing at Wrigley Field. Like, what is this schedule? This is extremely difficult. I hope they can get to 5 games, 5 wins. I hope they could get to 6 even, because I like this Northwestern team. I'm probably going to be betting them as a frisky underdog in some of these spots, especially against home games against like Oregon early in the season. We'll see what the spread is, of course. But man, very, very hard schedule. Let me know what you think about Northwestern or what you expect given the hard schedule. And let me know if you want to see any other teams coming up. We'll finish out the Big Ten, the ACC, and then we'll hit some of the high-level G5 stuff. But until then, good luck, everybody. We will see you again soon.